this is the most controversy right now surrounding the game because the
Yeah.
visuals are what they are. Like, it's kind of unfortunately like an expectancy of Nintendo to kind of be maybe a little bit less graphically. Although the Wii U generation, they've been knocking it out of the park. I mean,
3D World is gorgeous. Yeah,
yeah,
they've been doing great.
yeah.
Really.
I mean, but I mean, there's still. I mean, even as good as they've been doing with the Wii U,
Yeah.
like Mario Kart 8 can be held up next to most PS4, Xbox One games, and you can say Mario Kart 8 is like a still a gorgeous game. And I think though there's still like that stigma though of like that Nintendo is kind of graphics last, gameplay first.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And so like that's a little bit of controversy, but for the longest time though, Nintendo has for the most part always been, but the controls are always good. Like when you pick up Mario Kart, anyone can pick up Mario Kart and Mario Kart's fun. Anyone can pick up Wii Sports, flick the Wiimote, and it's
hmm
fun. Like that was the big incentive and the success of the Wii. And
Well,
then you
it's
have
since Mario Bros. Really, it's like they
yeah,
nailed
you go
the
right.
physics.
Like
Yeah.
yeah, you go right, you jump. I mean, Sonic was always up and down and left and right. And it's like where you go and stuff. And
Well,
um,
they just never had his physics right. It was just always about something about Nintendo. They really mastered just the feel of how far you're supposed to jump and how it's supposed to feel coming back down and how the momentum of your jumps. And it seems like almost every other platforming game, they're trying to mimic either Mario's feel or they don't get it too right where you either jump too high or you jump too far or you come down a little too floaty or it seems like Nintendo always gets it just right. Like it's where it's kind of like the Goldilocks whole thing, where
yeah,
it's like this game it's a
someone's
little
been
too
sleeping
cold.
in my bed.
Yeah. And yeah, Nintendo is just always that perfect temperature and always just right there.
But with
Um,
Star Fox
yeah, and it's
Zero,
always been that way too, like with Star Fox.
but
Like
with
Star
Star
Fox
Fox
always,
Zero, you come along and
yeah,
it does have that initial, just like with Mega Man, you have to
yeah,
adjust, and it's like okay, this isn't the intuitive jumping mechanics of
yeah,
Mario. Like I need to think, okay, Mega Man jumps differently, and you play like Castlevania, it's the same way. Like these are kind of some heavy jumps and stuff, and then you have, I mean. And so you have all these games, and it seemed almost like when you play Star Wars Battlefront, for example, this is like I mean, honestly, like just a good comparison of just kind of like space battles, or I guess in atmosphere battles is what they technically are. Like it feels very intuitive to fly in Star Wars. Like you pull up, you pull down, you fly, and it's just there's the screech, and you can lock on and follow people, and like we were able to hop into Fighter Squadron right away with Star Wars Battlefront, and for the most part, be like able to ready to start shooting people, locking on, targeting. But Star Fox, even though like we were able to get in there right away, there definitely is like that barrier to entry of like you got to kind of get a grip on these controls. And while we think that they do click after a while, compared to Nintendo's normal controls being super intuitive, this doesn't seem to be like following that tradition. It seems to be um, for some people, it's like okay, not only are the graphics bad, but the controls are bad too, which seems very anti-Nintendo. But um, we have argued and have been kind of believing that the controls aren't so bad.
yeah,
That it's that tricky thing where it's a new step forward and it's not intuitive, but it is intuitive after a while. Which is that still intuitive? Because intuitive is kind of just like immediate, but
mm,
it's tricky, and we have some quotes here from the developers of the game. They had an interview with Polygon, who has been going back and forth on this game. Directors Yugo Hayashi of Nintendo and Yasuki Hashimoto from the co-developer Platinum Games see the control mechanics of Star Fox Zero as keeping in with the series' DNA. Quote, for me personally, I've played the Star Fox game since the Super Nintendo. Hayashi said in an interview through a translator on the eve of the game's American launch. And this is from Polygon. Quote, it's always been a series about experimenting and trying new things, end quote. He actually went on to say, quote, Star Fox Zero actually started as one of the kind of experiments we did when thinking about how to use the Wii U gamepad. And then Hashimoto added, quote, we are very aware that we are doing something new and something that would take time for people to get used to while they played. Um, when referring to the potential complaints about old school Star Fox fans, who we've seen a lot on Twitter. I've been messaging back and forth with them with people kind of having not an entitled sort of thing, but kind of like, yo, I've played these games. I know what Star Fox feels like. Like, did you play them too? Because I have, and this is not Star Fox. And then you have the developers here saying, "Yo, we're in the same boat. We've played since the Super Nintendo. We've played 64, and we believe this is part of the series still." Um, and then when like talking about people getting confused with this controls, they said, "quote That was something that did concern us, but we felt strongly enough to ask people to get used to it. We never really thought about making it possible to turn off the gyro controls or make the game playable using the Pro controller. It was really just our thinking that being able to look at your first person view on the gamepad and line up shots that way felt very intuitive and very fun." Um, they go on to say that like nailing the two screen experience was very important to them, and that's why they didn't want to have like any other form of controls outside of the gamepad.
Hmm.
In reference to adding guard, they said, "quote It's a very new and different kind of genre." And I felt like it was something that people wouldn't get what was fun about it until they actually tried it. So that's why there's a demo included in Star Fox Zero if you buy Star Fox Zero separately. And then to wrap it all up, the thoughts on the controls and the general theme of Star Fox Zero, Hayashi said, "quote I definitely understand that the controls are difficult and take time to get used to, but once you're used to them, you'll find yourself able to rack up bigger scores. I feel positive about what Star Fox Zero has become." And so I think that's very assuring because there's talks out there and tweets about people being like, "What were they thinking?" We've talked previously about like Metroid Prime Federation Force, where you have these developers that maybe have an idea, put a lot of investment into it, and then are like, but they can't really back down now. They have to just keep going with it, and there's like those sunk costs. And it seems like and because this is on the eve of the game coming out, so this is before they've probably been able to see by now that critics aren't liking it, but they're still not there's still not the loud outcry of fans quite yet of whether or not they do like the controls. And so this is them speaking as almost as unbiased as they can be about just like this is what we had with the game. And it seems like they're confident in it and that like every part about it, like they recognize that it's difficult, but they're confident in that decision. And I agree with them. I think that it is difficult to get, that's hard to get used to, that it's different and not the traditional thing, and yet it does feel like no part of me was after playing like Star Fox 64 in both versions, like the 64 controls and the 3DS controls. No part of me thought like this is a massive break away from what we've seen in the previous Star Fox games. It felt like the next step. It felt like you have the ability now to aim where you're not flying. That's where the series should go. Like that seems like something that would be a part of the game.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It seems like it's a cool innovation in a lot of ways for the gamepad. And I don't think it's necessarily where I want the games to stay moving forward.
Hmm.
I would think that I would hope honestly that if they make, and I hope they do, continue the series
Yeah.
and make a more refined, um, even I don't know, make it better, make it even maybe a little longer and in some ways, and but uh, take the controls, really refine them, and go back kind of to the, I don't know. I just want them to really perfect the feeling really good again of Star Fox. And I do think that it does feel like, I'm not saying it doesn't feel great and that it doesn't, like, once you get used to it, there's a lot of fun elements to it, but I don't know. It just seems like there are, like, they could have used the right stick or something to use the aiming a little bit better, and I don't know, use some of the other buttons to do some of the hovering and the, it seems like they could still do that. They could still refine the
Yeah.
controls in a way moving on in the future where we don't have to necessarily rely, or they could have the option of it. Because, I mean, you could always still really simply, even with, I'm sure, the PlayStation 4 controller or something like that, you could have it where you can aim just by moving the controller, like with the gyro. You don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to have the screen down below. Um, but yeah, I definitely think I can see moving forward where they kind of maybe take certain elements of this whole motion thing and maybe just I wanted to see it refined a bit more. There are certain times where I feel like, and I'm sure I'm going to be playing and replaying the game for quite a bit now.
Yeah, I'm excited to get back into it. I'm like, I want to get every medal and stuff. Like,
Yeah, definitely.
I want to just milk this game as long as I can. Because
Yeah,
honestly,
there's
there's not too much else to play on the Wii U right now. If you've
yeah,
already played everything else,
yeah,
I was gonna say that earlier. If you don't have a Wii U yet, and you're wondering, is there are some Star Fox fans that are wondering, like, is this the game to make me finally
yeah,
get a Wii U? And they're like, oh, I guess not. I think, I mean, I don't think it is like this one game, but if you don't have a Wii U yet, this game on top of all the others that have come out, like this is a good time to join. Like now that this game is out, like it's a good excuse to go out and get one.
yeah. Um, Yeah, and speaking about the two screen experience, I was thinking that was kind of interesting. Is I was dwelling on that a bit just because, like, how often do you? Because for me, especially since you've told me about the whole pressing the minus button, it
Hmm.
seems like sometimes I'll glance down maybe really briefly at the gamepad, but for the most part, I really don't want to be looking at the gamepad,
Yeah.
and I'll just kind of switch back and forth. And I guess that is to some degree a two screen experience, I guess. But could they have done that? I'm saying in a way that is without using the gamepad or just to
Yeah, I
switch
think
to
I
the
mean 'cause
cockpit
that is a
view.
big question is, and I've talked to people about it online, like because it seems like one of the outcries and stuff is not so much that the motion controls are there because people do like the motion controls. The big complaint is that there's not even the option to go without them, and we haven't really heard a valid excuse besides, oh, you can't play the game without them. Like you need that second screen experience. And I like you've mentioned that you would like them to, moving forward, to maybe incorporate more traditional controls or refine the ones they have to maybe be more traditional or something.
Yeah.
And I would very much so be okay with and almost embrace these controls moving forward in the series, if possible, on the NX console.
Yeah,
Uh,
I wouldn't object to it, I guess, because we're getting pretty used to it now. So
yeah,
at
like I
least we
mean,
know it. At least it'd be familiar. But
yeah, and I've had some satisfying moments like using these controls because
yeah,
they're kind of difficult, where it's just like, man, I was able to do that with these kind of difficult controls. And as
yeah,
someone like me who I'm all about like immersion, where like I play Fallout on survivor mode where I have to like go eat and
yeah,
drink and
yeah.
sleep and stuff. Like I'm all about maybe sometimes hindering what would normally be like the fun experience for people
Made
to make it,
easier. Yeah,
yeah,
right.
make it a little more hardcore and stuff. And so I
Yeah,
like these options of more like, I mean,
definitely.
the way
Um,
the way you push the thrust and then pull back on
mhm.
your R wing, and then you move the Wiimote and kind of sway your arms to pull up the aim and stuff. Like it feels like when like you're sitting in kind of like a chair, maybe that's a little bit more lax and stuff, and you're kind of like wobbling around. Like it feels like you're kind of pulling this spaceship
Oh
and like
yeah,
you're
I'm always
flying.
moving my head around and stuff, while I'm playing. Like, and
Yeah,
I'm almost like, and lasers will be coming at me, and I'll notice myself kind of dodging out of the way and stuff
yeah, like
because
it's a very like when you get all those controls and you get them like fluent, where you're like
mhm.
pulling back, getting the thruster, doing a barrel roll, and then quickly pulling out your bomb and then aiming. And I mean, it's just like it feels like you're in this cockpit, moving it like these dials and flipping out and stuff, and like really kind of controlling it
Yeah,
and stuff. Like we just watched The Force Awakens, and you see like Rey and Finn in there, and Finn's like sliding all over in the Millennium Falcon because it's like super loose, and he's trying to get a use on the controls, and like Rey is flipping everything and trying to figure out how to get like, I mean, it's just like, and you feel kind of like you're in like this Star Wars epic adventure, but it's
yeah,
Star Fox, and it's just
yeah. I've
I do
always felt,
I
yeah,
do think it's like offers this immersive kind of new epic adventure side of it,
yeah, for sure.
which I wouldn't want to be absent. However, people don't like it. And I think games should try to cater to the players now that they have the power to do so and make an immersive experience however they can. And if people are more immersed through having traditional controls, then they should
Yeah,
at least have that option. And so far in playing Star Fox Zero, there hasn't been something that wouldn't be possible on a traditional controller. The only thing I can think of, and kind of a spoiler, but it's from Star Fox 64. So it's, I mean, been out there for a while, but I mean, there's the final boss, I guess, is there's like these things on the cockpit view only that you can't see unless you're viewing it through the cockpit. However, once again, you could just click the minus, or like you could have just the ability to pull up your cockpit view on the main screen and never use the gamepad. Or even beyond that, they could have just made that not a thing.
yeah,
That is not essential to the boss fight at all. Like, it seems almost they're like, how can we get people to view the cockpit view in this final boss battle?
yeah,
Oh, I know. We'll make it so the entryways are highlighted on the
Trust your
cockpit.
view from the cockpit.
Fox, trust your instincts. But yeah,
I wanted to comment too on just like, yeah, you make a great point about how, like there's a boss fight where you kind of have to shoot. It's kind of a spider arachnid sort of fight where you're shooting off the legs and the joints, and then you have to kind of quickly shoot out because it'll slam down on, it kind of jumps over you and then tries to slam down, and you have to jet out, and then you kind of
so fun.
transform, and it's just when I was done with that mission, I just remember thinking like, man, we really put in work. Like, we really I was really like I had to transform, fly through the air and like hit the points, and then I'd transform into the little walker, and then I'd go down and hover up and shoot the little top points, and then I'd blast off, and then I'd like
Yeah,
turn
it's epic.
around and shoot it again, and then go down to shoot the little crawler guys, little walker, little mini spider guys, and then they'd like flip to the top of the hatch, and I like hover over and then shoot the top hatch, like aiming down with my gamepad. And in those moments, I guess oftentimes I would use just look down at my gamepad or just quickly switch to the minus, and it just felt so great. And sometimes I'd be like aiming down below me where I couldn't even see the where I was shooting, but I just knew it, and then it would blow up. And I don't know, it was just I was just getting so into the rhythm of it and so immersed in it. And then once it was over, it was just like, yes, like we
Yeah.
really put in the work. We really like had to do so many different things in that. It wasn't just flying around blasting. We were transforming and then hovering and then blasting out and then using a bomb and blasting these guys and then having to go get some life and
Yeah, I
switch to
love
this
that. Like that. I
view
mean,
and
it seems like, especially if you like put down the Falco amiibo and you're even getting more weak. Like I had the battle on Sector Beta and stuff, and that was very much the same thing where it's like you're flying, you turn into a walker to land on a spaceship and shoot out like its gun real quick, and then you turn back into an R wing and fly. Like, and there's just I saw some complaints online about just the transformations in general. Like someone said, no one wants to stop being an R wing. No one wants to stop what they're doing and stop moving. Like the game is supposed to be fast paced, and I love like those the pacing and the kind of back and forth of flying and then turning into a walker and
I think
stopping real quick and
yeah,
shooting out something because you're not moving and maybe like doing a quick dash over and then turning back in an R wing and like that feeling of blasting off. Like,
it's really cool.
yeah, it has a nice pacing to it. Like the one mission where they force you to do it and stuff, it feels so cinematic. Like you're infiltrating and hacking, and it's just like the game does do a very good job at, I think, moving all these controls about to kind of make you feel, like you said, like you're earning the victory. Um,
Yeah, definitely.
Compared to like maybe just having it like lock on to a target and just shoot out, shoot out, shoot out, and go, go, go. That being said, especially with Nintendo, and they have a game like Yoshi's Woolly World, which literally makes it so you can't die.
Yeah. Well,
It's
and this one does too.
well, it's just interesting that they don't have like a mode where it's just it locks onto targets. You don't use the motion controls. You just, I mean, aiming is just automatically in front of you, you know.
Right.
Um, and it's weird that that's not an option. And there was
Hmm.
just, I mean, maybe it's because I had the motion controls, I didn't realize it. But I just don't remember a moment where it was like that something was out of my reach, you know. Um, like where I couldn't shoot at it beyond what the motion control or with yeah like without the motion controls. Like it seemed like everything was always accessible like of my R wing that I could just fly towards it and shoot it. And maybe that would prove to be more difficult overall. But once again, people would adjust, and so I just the option I think moving forward should be present if they can.
Hmm.
That being said, me personally, I wouldn't mind if this is the future of Star Fox. And as we've also said, hopefully this doesn't prevent the series from moving forward at all. Like um,
Yeah.
as someone
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
hadn't really grown up with Star Fox, and in the recent month I've gone through and I got Star Fox 64 3D and I
Hmm.
played through that, and then I got Zero and I've been loving Zero. I'm kind of like, all right, I got like a new franchise that I love, you know, like I want this to keep going. I want to go back and play Assault and Command and stuff and try out
Yeah.
these other experiences
Hmm.
and really dig into this franchise
Yeah.
because it's always just really exciting when you have a new franchise.
Well, it
And
hasn't been too promising, I would say, I guess, so far. You know, from what we've
yeah,
seen, like I guess I mean, they become classic games like the SNES one, Star Fox will always be a classic. Star Fox 64 will always be a classic, which is why, of course, it was remade in the on the 3DS because it's just a classic 64 game. Um, I don't know. It seems like it's really cool that the Wii U has been kind of an era, I feel, of a lot of nostalgia and trying to go back to the roots in a lot of ways of Nintendo. And it seems like Star Fox is one of those. I don't know if it'll be necessarily remembered as an iconic game and going forward. It's an interesting like sort of would you rather too. I think of just the controls moving forward and whether or not I
Yeah.
definitely I think I don't know. I'm kind of either way. I wouldn't mind totally if they sort of make it a more refined, um, sort of Star Wars Battlefront space, like those space fight kind of
Yeah.
controls, or if they keep it this way. I'm
Although
kind of fine either
there were
way.
several times I was like, I wish Star Wars Battlefront played like this.
Yeah,
Like
well,
it's in certain space battles, I was like, man, I wish this was.
I was thinking a few times too, like I wish that like this is kind of almost in a way the Battlefront single player like that I wish that I had. Like I wish there
Hmm.
was something because I mean I'm shooting on this planet, we're flying over and there's just these little like UFO droids flying around, and there's these kind of alien things going on and it seems very and I mean it's Star Fox, it's based a lot on Star Wars and Star Trek sort of
Yeah, well, like it
feels.
starts off like with the title crawl and stuff, like.
Yeah. So, it's got a lot of that feel and it just made me kind of wish like here's kind of in a way, not necessarily, not totally, but in a somewhat symbolic way, a bit of my getting my Battlefront single player
Hmm.
experience to some degree because
I
it's
thought the
just
same thing, yeah.
yeah.
And so, yeah, hoping there's a sequel. We can kind of talk about that in the conclusion. But moving forward, we spent a little bit longer on that. We just have a
Star Fox
tendency to,
1.
yeah, yeah. What are they gonna do with the sequel? Like, what's gonna be the name? It's just Star Fox NX or what?
Star Fox 1 would actually like, it kind of just being a whole like team in a, militarily kind of speaking, it just seems
Oh
like
yeah, that's
Air
true.
Force 1, Star Fox 1. Like
Rogue
they could do
One.
it. Yeah. It wouldn't
Yeah.
be too far off, but yeah.